The first question is, what is the best piece of advice? This might put you on the spot. Well, what is the best piece of advice from Bishop Aimilianos you've heard? What is the best story of Elder Aimilianos you've heard?
Cheeky questions.
Yeah, this is
The best piece of advice that I heard from Bishop Aimilianos. There are two things. One of the things I was going to share with you all, but it was further, and then I didn't have the time to go into it. Two things that they also have to do with obedience and how we present ourselves amongst the everyday people, all the people around us. So what I was going to say in regards to obedience, and I will say about these two things, is that nowadays, more than ever, I would say, and more than the past at least, there are some things that they prevent us from practicing true obedience. And in this list, you could add many more other things, like social media, the way we are brought up, influences by the society, sometimes our psychological state, our physical state prevents us from practicing true obedience. Other times, we come with the excuses that our environment, either the immediate or the people around us, sometimes they prevent us from practicing obedience, or they prevent us from communicating with each other, or they prevent us from cooperating with each other. So one of the first piece of advice that I received from Elder Aimilianos, from Bishop Aimilianos, was when I would go to him and say to him that I would feel uncomfortable with things. Like, for example, if I was to talk to people, I remember, for example, sometimes people would, not many, thank God, would come to the monastery and they would like specific, there were only a few, like one or two, don't think of anything special, and they would come and say to me, we want to have a discussion with you. And as you know, in the monastery, not everyone just can go and have a discussion with all the pilgrims. There has to be a monk or a priest or someone who is a spiritual father, who has experience, who knows what to say, someone who won't be influenced by the things that he will hear from the people that they come and unfortunately bring the world inside the monastery. And Bishop Aimilianos once told me, before I even became a confessor, he said to me, what are these things that you are saying? Just go and talk to the people and don't be like this. One day you're going to become a spiritual father, and how are you going to deal with all the problems that people are going to share with you? So amongst these things that I would tell him, he said to me once, you have to learn how to be comfortable. I'm not sure if comfortable is the right translation in English. In Greek, he said to me, πρέπει να είσαι άνετος. Meaning, you have to give inside you, yourself, you have to give yourself inside you to have space. Not to feel that you are put on the spot, not to feel that you cannot move or you can't do anything, regardless of the circumstances that you are in or at. Is this the right way to describe it, Yerda? In English. Yeah. For me, this was one of the pieces of advice that it helped me a lot, because after this, I was always trying, I'm not sure if I have succeeded into this, but I was always trying not to look into the circumstances, the difficulties that we had to go through, the people around us, the different characters, and I would always say to myself, just be a bit more patient. Or this person is like this, but maybe they are going through something. Or it's not the end of the world, tomorrow it's a new day. Do your best, and then God will intervene. And the solution to all of these things that we've just mentioned sometimes is not easy to find. And problems, I don't know if you've realized this, problems that we are going through, sometimes they can just go on and on forever. The problems that we usually face in our lifetime, sometimes they are not easy to be solved. So the problem is not to find solutions for our problems if you cannot find a solution, but the solution is to see how you can present yourself in front of these problems and how you can view these problems. And then if you try and become anetos of what we said, or comfortable, if you try and be okay with everything that comes, then I suppose life becomes a bit easier. And another piece of advice which was not written on this notebook, but I think it's also very important, is every now and then, as I said, I would just go and confess. Most of the times complain. This is what we do usually when we go for confession. We complain. We rarely acknowledge our mistakes and our wrongdoings. So I would go and complain. There's another thing now. Anyway, more things come up. And he would tell me, please pray to God and to Panagia so that you are able to understand the people. See, such simple advice, but if you think about it, can we understand the people that they are next to us? The people that we live together with them? I'm not sure, I don't think so. Maybe not all the time anyway. So if we were to understand them, then I think our approach, the way we approach what they say, what they're going through, it would be different. And a third piece of advice, which is also important, I have to say, is that it helped me a lot, although at the time it was hard for me to accept, is that Elder Aimilianos almost never, in any confession I had, he never justified me. So whenever I would confess things, most of the times, if not all the time, the problem was the others and not myself. And this is hard to accept, but I can tell you that it was one of the most important things that I had to learn. And one of the stories of Elder Aimilianos.
Yes.
A while ago, I spoke on the phone with one of the fathers from the Simonopetra monastery a few years ago. And it was the time that Bishop Aimilianos, Elder Aimilianos, had left or was about to leave the monastery in Perth to become the new chancellor. And anyway, I knew that I was going to succeed him.
Being the abbot of the monastery.
Being the abbot of the monastery there. So you can only imagine by just meeting today Elder Aimilianos what this meant to me. The moment that I realized that this was going to happen, it was as if a load of weight came on my shoulders, and I just went and said to him, basically in tears, how am I going to do this? Anyway, but everything had to happen according to God's plan, I suppose. So when I spoke to this one of the fathers, the old fathers, an example of a monastic and an ascetic, he said to me, maybe to give me some encouragement, because it was around the time that, everything was going to happen. He said to me about an encounter that he had with Elder Aimilianos when he was already unwell. But he was able to walk without being able to speak. So as they were walking, from one side he was holding Elder Aimilianos on his arm, on the other side there was another sister at the monastery of Formilia, because this is where Elder Aimilianos spent his last years of his life. The sisters looked after him there. They were walking, and this father was thinking inside him without saying anything. He was saying, Geronda, he was saying, when you were around us and you were able to teach us, we had you as a protector, as a guide. You were everything for us. But now that you are unwell and you can't do this anymore, what is it going to happen to us? Because I think it was at the first few years that Elder Aimilianos was unwell. And then he didn't even have the chance to finish his thoughts. And Elder Aimilianos, that he was not able to talk anymore, looks at him like this and says to him, the only thing that I've tried to do during my lifetime, or while I was with you, was to direct you to Christ and no one else. And then just went back, and he went back to his, without being able to talk again. Mind you that he did this a few times when there was a need. So I suppose this also has to do with what Geronda said before, because Geronda, he truly has the spirit of his Geronda, but also the praise of a Geronda and of a spiritual father, they are with us for generations to come.
Amen.
Thank you, Jeroen. Two questions here. Does a wife's obedience to her husband require him to love her first? If the wife does not feel love from her husband, where does she draw the line on how much to obey?
First of all, I don't think obedience in the monastic sense has to apply in the marriage. There are some differences there. So you can, the husband, for example, cannot just go and say to his wife, the same way you are obedient to your spiritual father, you also have to be obedient to me. I don't think this is right. And it won't work, although it does happen. And vice versa. It depends. It's a big problem if the husband and wife, they are not one mind and one body. Because if they were, then there wouldn't be a problem or a question of how much each one of them loves each other, because they would feel fulfilled from the love and the presence of the other person. But now we are talking about something which is the optimum, okay? I suppose there has to be love, as we said, mutual love, mutual respect, for a marriage to work. And being obedient in the marriage means that I cannot think of anything else apart from my wife or my husband being well, feeling loved, being at peace, feeling that she or he is understood. So if you think like this, then yourself trying to do anything you can for the other person to feel loved, understood, at peace, rested. We are not talking about obedience anymore. You understand what I mean? It's not a responsibility anymore. It's not a requirement. It's not you have to or you don't have to. It's not you love me more and I love you more than what you love me. Or you do the dishes today and I've done the dishes the last week. So you have to do the dishes for 2 more weeks now, so we can be equal. And it's just that sometimes life is so hectic and busy that we forget about these simple things, and then marriage can become a competition. Just 2 people living together and competing about everything. Your son, your daughter, your work, your wallet, my money, your money, your car. Our holidays that I've planned and you didn't contribute. Or the holidays that you have planned with your spiritual father and you didn't consult me. Because this happens a lot. Father Zacharias says in one of his talks that one lady once went to him and said to him, Father Zacharias, I just wanted your opinion. Is it okay for us to go with my husband on holidays? And Father Zacharias said to her, consult your husband and your wallet and make a decision. Yes. So, anyway, I'm sorry that I'm just saying this as just to lighten up the atmosphere. But you know what? I think to answer as well to this question, the solution is to try and work deeper in the relationship between the two, the husband and wife. And then if we truly become one with the other, I think there is no question anymore whether you have to love someone more or less, whether you have to be obedient more or less. It just happens automatically. If we are not there yet, we can work towards this way. Yes. But I don't think we have to think in such a way that says that he is not satisfying what I need, so I should show to him less love in order to punish him. I'm not sure. And vice versa. I'm not sure. And of course we can consult our spiritual father on this, but if we go down this path, then there can only be negative things happening. I'm not sure. I don't know, Yeruda, what you think, and Father. But,
Thank you, Yeruda. Another question, which is similar, but a little bit different. How can someone practice obedience when they are in the leadership role in the family and marriage? It is difficult to find chances to be submissive when the others in the family submit to you.
This is a very good question. What I can say is that I wish everyone had the same this problem, the same situation. It's usually the opposite. But it is a very it's a very good question and a very good point. And from this question, you can understand that if you have philotimo inside you, even if you have a position of authority, whether this is in the church or in the family or at work, the only thing that you think of is how to please the others and be the person you should be, even if you have authority. So how can you do this? First of all, there are different ways of exercising authority. Like that's why the ancient Greeks, our ancestors, used to say that from the authority that someone has, you can understand what type of person this person is. They used to say, exousia δείκνυση άνθρωπο, from their position, the way they behave, when their position changes, you can understand what is this that they truly have inside them. But I suppose if you act with philotimo, with love, if there is common respect between the family members, then you find ways to be submissive to the other people's needs, to what the other people need, what the other people want, so that you can make them feel, as we said before, loved, understood, at peace. And if you are in the position to do this, why not doing it anyway? So in the family, it doesn't matter who has the authority or not. What it matters is to keep the balance and for everyone to be happy and feel loved and understood. Whether it is the wife that can play this role, or the husband, or the two together, it's the outcome that should matter. Not whether someone has authority and the other one doesn't have authority and has to be submissive or not. I don't know if this makes sense, what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ieron. Do you have a practical advice for learning to be obedient when you have a wild nature?
First of all, having a wild nature, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a common mistake that we make, especially in the church, that we judge people not only from their appearances, but from their character, how extrovert they are or introvert they are, how they behave, how they talk, whether they're loud or they are silent. This has nothing to do with our potential to reach out to God and become holy. That's why sometimes we can have surprises, like you can have people that they seem quiet and submissive and following all the virtues, and these people might never make a decision to become monastics, or they might not be as ascetic or as accurate in the spiritual life. And you might have someone who seems wild. I don't know if this is the right way to describe someone who is active, loud, happy, energetic. And these people, because they have so much zeal and energy inside them, if in front of them they have the right examples and the right circumstances, they can just reach out to God like a rocket in seconds. So I think it depends how we help people find God and channel everything that they have inside them to the right direction.
Thank you. Next question is, how can how can I honor and obey the advice of my spiritual father's guidance while also practicing discernment so that I'm not simply following him blindly?
Yes. Now, as we said, it depends what type of obedience we are talking about. For example, when you are in a monastery, at the beginning, the fathers of the church, they talk about the blind obedience, which is at the beginning when you go to the monastery, obviously as much as you can do, but you are required, because this is going to help you long term, to follow what your Yeroda says to the letter. Because if you start putting rules, and if you start exercising your not existent discernment or your worldly discernment once you enter the monastery, then you can understand that this is not going to work out. I don't know if you heard, there is a story of someone who was trying to become a disciple of famous elders back then. It was the time that Saint Paisius was still alive, Elder Joseph from Vatopedi, and a few other elders. Anyway, this person apparently was not to become a monk, but he was still trying to become a monk. It seems that he was full of ego, or he was not as submissive as he had to be in order to become a novice or a monastic. So apparently he went to Saint Paisius, and Saint Paisius spent with him some time, and then he said to him, "My child, just go, because if I was like Saint Anthony the Great or like the old desert fathers, I would be able to transform you, but now I cannot." Then apparently he went to Elder Joseph from Vatopedi, and Elder Joseph from Vatopedi said to him, "Look, I only had one Yeroda, and I buried him. I don't need another Yeroda above my head, like to tell me what I have to do. So maybe you just go and you will find someone else." Meaning that for monastics, at the beginning, there is no discernment. But there is one important thing that Yeroda mentioned. If your Yeroda asks you to do something, and inside you have something different in your mind, you ought to say this to your Yeroda, so that your Yeroda understands where you are standing and what you are thinking. But in the case of the lay people, I suppose we have to say to our Yeroda what we think, whether we are able to do what he advises us to do or not. And on this, we also have to choose, I think, also a Yeroda who has discernment and is trying to understand us, so that whatever he asks from us is not something that will create problems inside us, but it is something that we can handle at the time that he is asking this from us. And if our Yeroda has discernment, I think such problems, they are minimized.
Thank you, Gerald. So this is a long question, but I think the intent will be clear. The way you describe a person with philotimo, willing to sacrifice and genuinely striving for the best for others, this is also what in worldly terms might be called a sucker. I have been obedient and trusting in
what?
A sucker.
yes, like a fool, maybe. I have been obedient and trusting in spiritual father relationships, and I have felt abused, taken advantage of, and left feeling like I gave my best, but was left burnt and broken. How can I heal? And how can I avoid being taken in by manipulative bad priests?
Yes. First of all, I think you will all agree that, and I also have to say that I'm terribly sorry to hear this question, because this is not something that someone has to ever experience in a relationship between a spiritual child and a spiritual father. This is not how it's supposed to be. I'm sure you all agree on this. Unfortunately, and we have said this many times, a Geronda or a spiritual father, unfortunately, has the power, or at least he thinks that he has the power or the authority, sometimes to impose on their spiritual children directions, advice, anyway, whatever you want to call them, ideas, thoughts, in such a way that sometimes becomes manipulative or blackmailing. So you either do this or God will not bless you. Or if you don't do what I'm saying, then I don't want to see you again. Or I've helped you for all these years, but now if you don't do this, I don't even want to know you. And all these things. Sometimes this might happen not in such an obvious way, and this is even worse, because there can be a manipulation happening, but in a kinder and more gentle way, but still the result is the same. The person who is receiving such advice in such a way can feel like this. So that's why the spiritual children sometimes, if they are facing such problems and difficulties, they have to think and then exercise discernment, ask for an advice from a different spiritual father, and make up their mind and make a decision if what they are experiencing is something they want to continue with. Because this is not something which sounds healthy. Now someone might ask, and why could something like this happen? For the simple reason that spiritual fathers and Gerondas are not infallible. We are humans. So sometimes spiritual fathers and elders make mistakes. The spiritual child, first of all, has to go and confess back to their Geronda how they feel. If the Geronda is a discerning Geronda, should listen. And even what their spiritual children are saying might not be 100% correct, he has to listen and he has to appear listening so that the spiritual child, first of all, feels listened, understood. Because if there is common will and goodwill from both sides, such things can be avoided. Sometimes we have people coming for confession and they might tell us, Geronda, you are not my regular spiritual father. I have a spiritual father, but there are things that I cannot confine to my spiritual father. That's why I have come to you. And then what we say to them is, okay, well, look, we can never turn away someone who comes for confession. But then we will say to them, but if you cannot confine to your spiritual father everything that you're going through, how is this relationship going to work out? How are you going to progress and move forward in your spiritual life? And if this is a regular phenomenon that is happening in your spiritual life, don't you think that it is about time for you to change spiritual fathers and a Geronda? Because our church says that we can change our spiritual father if, for whatever reason, we are not comfortable with them. Now what happens when the spiritual father exercises their authority and their manipulative techniques? I'm sorry for saying this, but it can happen. To such an extent that the spiritual children are blackmailed to such an extent that they cannot even change spiritual fathers. These things happen. well then, my advice to them is, if they have tried many times to talk to their spiritual fathers and it didn't work, and it was as if they were talking, I'm sorry for saying this, to a brick wall, then they have to make up their mind and understand that our salvation is a very crucial thing for us, and we have to find someone that is able to understand us and continue with them. There is no other way.
Cool, please.
Thank you, Jonathan. So the next question is, your blessing, sevasmiotate. I read also of blessed disobedience, and was hoping you could clarify this regarding your very beneficial speech. Thank you.
This question
Blessed, I've heard of this too. I think there's even a book, Blessed Disobedience.
I'm sorry, but I have never come across of something like this. If you would like to tell us about this.
I don't know much about it. It was in the situation. It was something like I can't remember clear enough to clarify the question. It's along the lines of when you're being told something that's clearly not appropriate.
Not right.
Like someone is your spiritual father or your bishop is heretical or something like this.
Yes. As we have said at the beginning of our speech, obedience has to do with freedom. So if the person that you are obedient to, for whatever reason, you feel that they are asking you to do things that they are not right, or their spirit is not something that you agree with, you have all the freedom to change your spiritual father and your elder.
Okay, thank you, Father. Thank you so much for your talk. Who is a saint dear to you that you would say practiced perfect obedience and we should learn from? And then there's a second question. If God gives us free will, is it a sin to not obey 100% of the time? As a beginner, I'm trying to learn. Thank you. So a saint that presented perfect obedience, and then if we're free, is it wrong? Is it a sin to not obey 100% of the time?
Yes. The saint that I would suggest for all of you to read his life, without being biased, is Saint Ieronymos of Simonopetra, of whom I got the name, who was also an example of obedience. If you are able to find an English version, even if it is a shorter version of his life, you can read about him. It's an amazing life where you can see that he was an example of obedience for all his life, considering all the bad things that other people did to him and whatever he went through. Now, in regards to the free will and as Yerda was saying in his speech, we also have to understand our measure, whatever we can handle. So, although we know that it is good to be obedient to our spiritual fathers and to our elders, again, depending if you are a monastic or a lay person, for example, a spiritual father or an elder should be able to exercise a different and direct a different type of obedience between monastics and lay people. For example, a spiritual father, you know this, cannot get involved that much in the life of a couple. Like, that's why sometimes I think it is also wrong when we go to our spiritual father and we ask for too many details. about things that they are not spiritual. You can ask for their opinion from your spiritual father, but then things become complicated, especially if the couple does not have the same spiritual father. But even if they do, the spiritual father sometimes is put in such a difficult position to try and balance the wants and the needs between the couple. So it is better if the spiritual father sometimes allows the couple for things that they are not that important and they do not have to do with their spiritual life, to be able to come to an agreement with themselves, with each other, without the spiritual father getting too much involved. Because then things become mixed up, and in the couple there is also a third person that has to be involved, and wherever you have more than 3 people, and then things they become even more tangled and involved. Okay, so at the end of the day, but whether you are a monastic or a lay person, because we have talked many times about freedom, we have to know our measure, and we must go back to our spiritual father and tell them if there is something that we are not comfortable with. Whether this is a piece of advice or a direction, an idea, a thought, something that he has told us, something obviously spiritual, right, godly, and still we cannot accept it, instead of just trying to go and do it and pushing ourselves and making ourselves feeling unwell and not being able to make it, it is good when we go back and to tell them, look, I've tried, but on this I couldn't make it because I'm not there yet. And I ask you to give me a piece of advice how I can move forward. Because with a good discussion and everything can be solved. Yes. And something else on this. One of the things that I also wanted to tell you is sometimes in regards to obedience, one of the enemies that fight obedience nowadays is our complicated thoughts. Meaning, let's say that your spiritual father advises you to do something, and for whatever reason you cannot do it. Nowadays, most of us, what we are going to do is, we are going to sit down and say to ourselves, oh, woe to me. I can't even be obedient to my spiritual father on a small thing. How am I able to move forward in my spiritual life? And we start having all these thoughts that the only thing they can do is put us down psychologically, mix us up inside us, and somehow we cannot understand the idea of the true obedience because of all these complicated thoughts. And then basically what is happening is what we say in Greek. Αυτός πνίγεται σε μια κουταλιά νερό. We are drowning in a spoonful amount of water. Because of such thoughts, such huge, complicated issues arise inside us, and things that they are too simple to be resolved, and they could have been resolved if you were to go back to your spiritual father and say, I'm sorry, but I couldn't do this. For whatever reason. We don't do this, and then we are over ruminating again and again the same things, and the only thing that we succeed in is to allow us to fall down psychologically. Yes.
Thank you, Yura. Another question here. Can you please share some instruction on learning how to partake Holy Communion more sensitively and responsibly? Does the spiritual father play a role on the reception of Holy Communion?
Fortunately or unfortunately, he does. Because as Gerda said, in the Orthodox Church, different spiritual fathers give different piece of advice for different things, and also for the preparation of Holy Communion as well. There are spiritual fathers that they encourage. I hope nowadays more and more spiritual fathers encourage Holy Communion more often. And there might be other spiritual fathers that they suggest to their spiritual children to have Holy Communion twice or 3 times a year. Even to this day this happens. And not only in Greece, but in foreign countries. Even back in Australia, there were people that they would come for confession and they would say that before having Holy Communion, I have to fast for 5 days oil-free so that I can receive Holy Communion. And if you were to ask them, how often do you receive Holy Communion? 3 times a year. And then you would say to yourself, well, this makes sense. Because if you receive Holy Communion 3 times a year, of course, you feel that it is something which is so, it is, don't get me wrong, but if it is only 3 times a year, you want to do all this preparation and fast for that many days. But if you were to fast for 5 days oil-free every time before going for Holy Communion, and if you were to receive Holy Communion often, this means that you would fast oil-free for the rest of the year. And it cannot happen. So, but because we are free, this is another thing that you have to consider before choosing your spiritual father. Like, if you, I don't know, if you would prefer to receive Holy Communion more often, and after confession, and with following all the things that your spiritual father advises you to do, you think that you would like to receive Holy Communion more often, and don't you think that you will have to go to a spiritual father that is of the same spirit? Because sometimes it does not only depend on the spiritual father, it depends on us as well. Sometimes, for example, there are people that they come for Holy Confession, and when you are just about to say, hey, have Holy Communion a bit more often, oh, they are ready to come after you. And they will tell you, oh, more often, Holy Communion, it's so important, I don't feel ready, I'm not prepared enough, and everything. Who is ever ready to receive Holy Communion? And who says that that the people that they receive Holy Communion often, they are 100% ready all the time to receive Holy Communion, to be honest. And who says that we as clergy are always ready as well to receive Holy Communion more often? We are trying our best, but we are humans. So we are trying our best, so it depends on us. If inside you have set an idea and you want to have Holy Communion this amount of times a year, I can tell you, even if you go to the spiritual father that allows everyone to have Holy Communion every day, let's say, still you won't be able to do it because you will have your own will. And then we come to another huge discussion about when we go for Holy Confession, whether we are able to cut off our will. And when we go for Holy Confession to the spiritual father we have chosen, if we are able to listen to what he has to say to us and not what we have to say to him, because there is a big difference.
Thank you, Ieronymos. Next question. I am a catechumen. When beginning the search for a spiritual father, does one generally start with one's own parish priest? Are spiritual fathers generally priests only or mature lay people? What advice do you give to those of us catechumens in finding the right spiritual father?
Yes, this is a very good question for many reasons, but for one reason which is fundamental. I'm not sure if everyone knows about this, but catechumens, at least this is the direction that we know anyway, catechumens, I don't know what is the practice as well, Father, at your church here and at the diocese here, but there is the tradition that catechumens are supposed to confess just before becoming baptized.
Yes.
So it is a bit, I wouldn't say strange, but it doesn't make that much sense if the person that does the catechesis classes is not also the spiritual father of the people that they are receiving the catechesis classes, because this makes things a bit more complicated. So if the person who does the catechesis classes happens to be a spiritual father as well from the church, I think this would be the optimum. Because the person who teaches the catechumens about the faith also has to be the person that will guide the catechumen after he is baptized. It makes sense, doesn't it? Yes. Now, if this cannot happen for any reason, then I suppose the father who does the catechesis classes is best to suggest to the catechumen a good spiritual father, that they can be in contact with the catechumen and build up a strong spiritual relationship, so that before they are baptized and once they are baptized are able to continue, because a lot of catechumens, believe me, they come just right to the day to be baptized, and for some reason they do not understand the importance of confession. Maybe because they are coming from a different, I suppose, religious background, that it's not their fault, that confession is not emphasized that much. And I think in our classes about the faith, confession has to be something that it should be emphasized. I don't know if you have anything to add on this, because you have big experience on catechumens.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. This is good. Next question is, Yeronda Ephraim, in his book, My Elder Joseph, made mention of how even if one's elder may be in error, a disciple by doing obedience will still reap a reward from God. There's a few questions here. Can you elaborate on this? And then the next question, and Saint Ephraim of Katonakia said once that obedience is greater than prayer, as obedience gives birth to prayer. How does obedience lead to prayer? And I can circle back, Father. As a husband, how can I be more obedient to my wife?
In this question, this person talks about the example of Saint Ephraim of Katonakia. I'm sure you all know about Saint Ephraim of Katonakia, because he was a contemporary elder, that he happened to be under obedience in a very strict elder, and all these years that he was under obedience under his elder, he basically suffered, Saint Ephraim of Katonakia. And apparently they say that whenever he was to describe what he went through from his elder, he would emphasize and he would say, not years, but seconds. How many, I don't know, thousands, millions of seconds, in how many years he was under obedience. Meaning that what he was experiencing, it was an intense experience every second of all these years. And yet, because he was a true monastic, and every time he was thinking of changing his Yeroda, something would stop him, and he would say to himself, no, this is the Yeroda that God has given me, and I will be obedient to him. And I'm sure you know the story when it was the time that his Yeroda passed away, and he went to receive the last blessing from his Yeroda while he was lying dead at the end of the funeral service. I think it was the grace of God, the Yeroda, that said to him that you've done well, you've done the right thing.
But if he was to leave his Yerda, he would have lost his soul.
Yes, and then Elder Ephraim said to the grace of God, he had constant communication with God. This is how he describes it, and he said, ρώτησα τη χάρη του Θεού, νομίζω έτσι το λέει μέσα. I asked the grace of God, but if I was to abandon my Yerda, and the grace of God replied to him and said, you would have been lost. Obviously, Elder Ephraim, Saint Ephraim was a saint, and we're talking about a specific situation. But this is a very good example of how true obedience, regarding of the holiness of our Yerda, can save us. Now, in regards to marriage, how can someone be obedient to his wife? In one of the books of Elder Aimilianos of blessed memory, there is a saying that someone once asked, I can't remember now, it was a famous writer, anyway, someone who was well known, they asked him, how are you? How are you going? And he said, I'm good, as far as my wife is good as well. And in Australia they say,
Happy wife.
happy wife, happy life. I don't know if you say this, they say this here in America. But
Yes.
so anyway, apart from joking, I can tell you, oh well, I can't tell you because I'm not married, but I don't think there is a greater thing for a married person to be able to make his wife happy and feel understood and at peace. But you have to do this voluntarily, and you should have thought about this before you even got married. If you think that this wife or this husband that you have next to you is not the right person. Because after marriage, I'm sorry, but you don't have the right to say this, and you don't even have the right to listen to all these silly temptations and thoughts that come to you, because this is what they do. As Yeroda said, the thoughts, when we are monastics, they tell us to go and get married, and when we are married, they tell us to go and become monastics, so the person that we have next to us is not the right person, as if there is ever going to be the right person or the best person on earth. If you go down this path and this circle of questioning yourself, there will always be a better person than the person that you have next to you. The solution is not to start thinking about all these things. So, just look at your wife and look at your husband's eyes, and if you are not able to see Christ, you have to work more.
Thank you. So we have a few more questions. Can I say something, Yeronda?
Of course, yes.
So I'm going to
You're
go back.
in charge. Obedience.
So I'm going to go back a few topics just to clarify something I think Bishop Aimilianos and Elder Aimilianos would agree, that on the one hand, sometimes spiritual fathers can, honestly, I think it's relatively rare, but it can happen. They can be manipulative. I won't get to a big example, but there was an example when I knew a lady in Romania who was a very successful middle-aged woman, and she found a very young monk to confess to, and he was saying, you have to give a card to the monastery, you have to give X amount of money to the monastery, and she figured it out eventually. But that's a very, I think, a rare situation. But there can also be, in our day and age, another temptation is when we go to a spiritual father and they say something we don't like, we just go to a different spiritual father. And they said something that one says something we don't like, and we go to another one. And we go to a different spiritual father, and we see some flaws, or we think we see some flaws, or maybe they are real flaws, but we have flaws too, so we go to a different one. So it is also, we have the freedom to go and to choose, but we also have to be careful that we're not, we're avoiding something, or there's something about the way we are approaching the relationship between a priest and obedience. So I just wanted to clarify that. Forgive me.
Of course. And when we said that the Church allows us to go and to go to different spiritual fathers up until we find the right one, yes, this is a very good point, and I failed to mention that once we find the right spiritual father, afterwards we have to stick to him, and we can't just find any excuse to go against him. And if I can say something else on this, another thing that nowadays happens, in the old days used to happen this because we are humans, but nowadays it happens, is let's say that you go to your spiritual father that you have chosen, and at some point you are on the crossroads and you have to make like a very important decision. And the advice that your spiritual father gives you might not agree with you for whatever reason. Okay? Maybe because he's thinking something different for you, maybe because of his background, his age, whatever else. You have every right, at the end of the day, not to follow his advice. I'm not sure what the outcome would be, but at the end of the day, you have every right not to follow his advice. But please, don't just go and condemn your spiritual father and make public the advice that he has given you. Because people do this. There is the confidentiality and the privacy of confession, but not only for what the people that confesses says to the spiritual father, it's vice versa as well. Like there are people, for example, that they might have the blessing to have Holy Communion even if they are not fasting. Okay? What do? They go then on a dinner, the people around, they might be fasting, and they might say to everyone, oh, my spiritual father allows me to have Holy Communion even if I eat meat. Hey, bravo, well done. After this, you've made everyone around you,
Go to that spiritual father. No.
You understand what I mean? Like, it applies both ways. So, if you don't agree with what your spiritual father has said to you, go back. If you go back and you think that he doesn't listen to you, or that he insists on what he has said to you, change your spiritual father. But why do you have to go and condemn your spiritual father and make it known then to the others as if you are doing this to take revenge? Because people do this, and this is not good. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying.
Thank you, Father. Ierono, Tinerhisu, what is your advice on being humble when there is traffic on the road or all the lights turn red? This person obviously lives in Boston. This is a Boston question.
Road rage. This is what they call it in Australia, road rage. I don't just take the bus or the metro. Find a different way to go to your work. I don't know. It's one of the things that I suppose we all face as problems. But you have to say to yourself, can you do anything about it? Like, let's say that in front of you there is a line of 100 cars. What are you going to do? Even if you start becoming upset, or you start exhibiting a behavior which is not Christian, is this going to help to change the situation? I don't think so. So then you are left with a bitter taste and regrets of something that you have found yourself that you have fallen in, although you shouldn't have. And then you still have to wait for the next hour in the car for the road to clear to be able to move. But anyway, I'm sorry for just, like lighten up the situation. I know it's a big problem, but I know what else can it be done. If there are any different ways or routes that you can take so that the traffic is less, you can do it. But if there is not, you just have to wait like all the rest of the people that they do the same.
You can listen to Elder Aimilianos'
Nipsis talks.
Nipsis talks.
Some people do.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
Thank you, Ieronymos. If the husband, and this is a similar question to some of them we've had, but we only have 3 more left, and I think we can get them in. Maybe we'll start at Vespers just a little bit late. If the husband and wife haven't become one and aren't trying to become one due to differences, what effect will this have on their children? Shouldn't the husband and wife try to crucify their ego and become one at the obedience of the same spiritual father?
No, and that is why when young people come to us for confession, I'm not saying this now to criticize the person who has written this question. I will also say something that it might be like a solution for this. But I'm just saying this to prevent such things. That is why when young people, or older people, adults anyway, come to us for confession, and they might be, I don't know, in a relationship. I don't like this name, this word. But anyway, this is the word that a lot of people use. To be honest, I don't even know what it means to be in a relationship and how you can define this. But anyway, maybe this is another topic for discussion. But when people actually come to us for confession and they discuss about their relationship, what is this that we tell them? Don't rush. This is exactly what Elder Aimilianos of blessed memory says in this magnificent piece of advice about marriage. It's in the small book, The Church at Prayer. It's amazing. Like, you can read this every day, and still there are things that you can grab to put them into practice if you are married or if you want to get married. So we tell them, don't rush. Don't just go and give everything from what you have inside you to the other person. She or he might be your best friend. Anyway, the best person that you have met up until now. You might have the best relationship. And then they fall into the trap and they just give to the other person everything. Elder Aimilianos says, keep a small piece of your heart for yourself, because if you give your whole heart to the other person, then if something happens and things do not work out, first of all you will be heartbroken, then it seems that there is no solution apart from going ahead and getting married. But if things are not fixed or 100% good before marriage, I think it is also hard to be good and fixed after marriage. It is not impossible, but it makes things harder. And then the people around us, the children, family members, they also are influenced by such situations. So there shouldn't be any rush at the beginning. I personally believe from my experience with confessions with people, young people, now this might sound funny, but there has to be an age limit. Anyway, I might be wrong, and I know that these things do not apply for everyone, so don't take my word literally, but I have seen that for some people, for example, getting married below 23 or 22 is not possible. And if you ask me why, I can tell you why. Because, first of all, they are not 100% sure of what they are going to do. Because some of them, they don't even realize the importance of what they are going to do. Some of them, they cannot even support their future marriage financially. So, if you cannot do all these things, I'm not sure if you're ready yet to make such a big commitment only to get married and then, God forbid, for a few months or years later, to come to the conclusion that it didn't work out. I think for some people, it's better if there is a bit more preparation and more thought on this, so that the marriage which is going to take place instead in 1 year, in 2 or 3 years, is more successful. I know that these things do not apply to anyone, and I believe that there are people that even if they are in 18 or 19 or 20 years old, they might be ready to do this, and I wish them all the best, but I'm afraid to say that if not the majority, a big percentage nowadays, they have to be of a mature age before they are to make any decision, not only about marriage, but even about even for monasticism and other big decisions in life. Why? I'm not sure. It's our society that we are living in, that people become mature a bit later on in their lives nowadays. Now, but if there are two people that are already married and they might be facing a few issues, they shouldn't stop trying. Definitely they should have the same spiritual father, so that he is able to advise them how they will be able to sort out any difficulties or issues they have between each other. And something else that is missing nowadays from people is patience. They need a lot of patience, and they also need to have resolve. They have to say to themselves, no matter what, we are going to try our best to make this marriage work. Like, we have to be brave, and we have to say to each other, don't listen to your thoughts, don't listen to what the other people are saying, look at me. And we are going to make this work, regardless of what we are going to through. There is no discussion about divorce. There is no discussion about not us being together. A lot of people sometimes, they even joke and they say, oh, divorce, oh. And the fathers say, St. Paisius, I think, used to say this, don't even say the word. Don't even discuss about these type of things. Even if you are facing problems and issues, just try your best to make this work. And if you do, I think it will be okay.
Can I say something, Father?
Yes, of course.
So this isn't from me. I served with some very good priests in Romania, and Father Iulian used to have a saying. He would say, when you get married in your 20s, it's out of love. When you get married in your 30s, it's because of your parents and friends. And after that, it's from the devil.
And after
After that, it's from the devil.
Ah.
It was a kind of a joke.
Ah.
The next question, Eυλογείτε Γέροντα. How long does it take for the fruits of an obedient phronema mindset to manifest themselves? How long does it take for the fruits of an obedient phronema to manifest themselves? Yes.
Straight away. So that we end up with a light atmosphere. Straight away. You know why? It's the same with nipsis, with watchfulness. Elder Aimilianos, when he talks about the watchfulness in his commentary on this book about Saint Isichios, he says that God does not wait from you to practice watchfulness for the next 20 years, yourself being in the dark, and the only thing that you have to do is just keep trying and trying and trying without having any consolation or any help. But God is so kind and loving that the moment you start trying to practice watchfulness, He will give you something to give you hope. So you start practicing, and then all of a sudden, after a week or a month or a year, I don't know, because for God there is no time, you can see that the brain is easier. Being able to have your mind clear from any thought for 5 minutes, it's easier. So I think it's the same with obedience. If we are practicing obedience with all our heart, God works in such a mysterious way that along the way we receive small pieces of encouragement to be able to continue. Because otherwise we become, we don't have the strength to continue, especially nowadays.
Thank you, Yoda. And the last question, how can we learn to truly love obedience?
First of all, we have to learn how to truly love God, and after God, whom? Our Yeroda and our spiritual father. Unless you realize that your spiritual father and your Yeroda is the person who is going to grab you by the hand and will be the one that will lead you to paradise, you can't practice obedience. Everything he says to you will be just a dry piece of advice. But if inside you, you have set inside you the idea, it has become for you not a philosophical idea, but you're certain, a certainty. If inside you, you are certain that your Yeroda is the person that God has chosen for you, even while you were in your mother's womb. Because there is a Yeroda for each one of us and a spiritual father for each one of us, which is ordered and set by God. And if you believe that this Yeroda and this spiritual father is the one who is going to lead you to paradise, then I think obedience is easy. It's not an obstacle for your spiritual life, but it is as if a big door opens and God shows you the way.
Sorry, I just laughed because as soon as you said that, the door opened.
Exactly.
For Vespers.
Yes, for Vespers. Yes.
Thank you very much, Ieronymos.